Dude, I drocking love Judge Dredd. I love the comics, I love the movie, not that one.
You betray the law!
The world it portrays and the level of sardonicism on display makes it one hell of a good world to get immersed in. In fact, as I'm writing this script, I'm currently reading the 7th volume of the complete case files. However, if you don't know what Judge Dredd is at all, its setup is fairly basic. It's the dystopian future, most of the Earth is uninhabitable, and everyone is crammed together in megacities. Due to rampant crime, the police force have been converted to judges who are able to render and serve out sentences on the spot. And that's basically all you need to know. But with all successful properties, there is but one constant, and that is the video game tie-in. Given the age of the Judge Dredd comic, you of course have the obligatory home computer releases with the 1987 and 1990 games on things like Commodore 64, ZX Spectrum, and Amiga. There were tie-in games with the Sylvester Stallone movie, a canceled beat-em-up by Midway, clearly from when they were on their Mortal Kombat grind. There was also a PlayStation rail shooter, which at the very least is notable for having live-action cutscenes.
Please, Dredd.
Must be your lucky day, lawbreaker.
Hey, you're not just gonna leave me here! Hey, Dredd! I know my rights! This is against the law!
I am the law.
That being said, these examples are all kind of in the category of who cares? Forget all those, though, throw them in the garbage, because today we're talking about 2003's Judge Dredd, Dredd vs. Death, developed by Rebellion. Of course, Rebellion is probably best known for their Sniper Elite series, because that's basically all they make nowadays. But back in the day, they were in the fucking trenches. A lot of their output was quote-unquote ports of games for lesser hardware. I put ports in quotes because these games are basically built from the ground up, and most of the time are completely different from the base game. They were rarely good, but the blame can't really be put on Rebellion. With low budgets and low turnaround times, the chance of these games being worthwhile was slim. Still, it's clear that Rebellion was a talented studio, with the first 2 AVP games and some quality titles on the PSP among others. However, that was not the reason Rebellion was given the rights to make a Judge Dredd game. No, the reason for that was because they own the rights to Judge Dredd. In 2000, they bought 2000 AD, the people behind Judge Dredd. So it was a pretty obvious choice for Rebellion to make games based on the 2000 AD lineup. Well, first of all, this game is actually available to purchase, so I don't have to struggle to get this game working on Windows 10. Still, there are a few things we need to do. First of all, there is a fan patch for modern resolutions, widescreen, and changing the FOV, which if you're going to play this game, I would recommend doing. This doesn't apply to you guys, but this game doesn't like to be recorded. It ends up playing really choppily, and the recording looks like this. Easy fix though, I just capped the frame rate to 30. Still feels choppy in some places, but I suppose it's not a very fair complaint to levy against it. I'm gonna tell you right now, I really like this game. This is my 3rd time playing through it, and with that I'm gonna be playing on the hardest difficulty, which all that really does is make enemies spongier and you take more damage. The game's tutorial is basic but quick, which is always appreciated, and you don't have to do it if you don't want to. However, we are given an overview of the Lawgiver, the judge's sidearm, and it has all of the firing modes from the comic, which is definitely awesome attention to detail, but not particularly useful in-game. Standard is pretty useful for most encounters, and if you need a little more oomph, armor piercing will pretty much cover the rest of your needs. The only other one I used is high explosive, which is useful for dispatching large groups, but most of the time it's overkill and not worth the ammo it uses up. Incendiary takes too long to burn enemies to death. With heat seekers, you still have to aim at the enemy, it's inconsistent, and they use up way too much ammo. Finally, Ricochet is shown off in the tutorial, but I have no idea when this would even be slightly useful. There aren't any shield enemies or a boss hiding behind something or some kind of puzzle, it's just a waste. That being said, even the most basic firing modes are still really satisfying to use. I love how the standard mode shoots in bursts and then vents steam. The Lawgiver can also zoom, and pairing that with the AP rounds, it becomes a pretty decent makeshift sniper. Can I go on a tangent and say I really love Fine Aim, and I wish more games still had it? Don't get me wrong, iron sights are cool, and they certainly make sense in any game with a more realistic setting. However, there is something so satisfying about zooming in and seeing the end of the gun shooting. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm just an insane person. We're introduced to the game proper with a cutscene, and we get our first look at Dredd himself.
Is Dredd. He is the law.
I must say, the guy doing his voice absolutely nails it.
I'll deal with this, Control. Let me know as soon as you hear anything of the Dark Judges.
His name is Toby Longworth, and he also voiced Dredd in a handful of audio dramas. I genuinely think if they didn't have a Dredd voice this good, this game would be at least like 40% worse. Hearing Dredd say,
"Life, we're gonna throw away the key,"
never gets old. Chief Judge Hershey and the wisecracking Anderson come to tell Dredd that the Psi Division has predicted a terrible plague. Anderson is also psychic and is a regular of the comic, so it makes sense and is a welcome addition that she's included here, even if it's a small role. No time for that, however, as we need to deal with these lawbreakers outside the Hall of Justice.
In the meantime, disperse those demonstrators outside.
Consider it done.
The sardonic wit is on full display here as we arrest all these peaceful protesters, giving each of them 10 years.
In this city, justice comes at a price. That price is freedom.
This is good world building, but it's mostly here to teach the player about arresting perps. Pressing E will have Dredd bark out a command. In this case, the protesters give up immediately, but next we have to deal with some scrawlers who don't listen until we put the hurt on a little. This is how the mechanic basically works for the rest of the game. Do enough damage to enemies, and sometimes they'll throw down their weapons. The most consistent way to make them surrender, however, is shooting the guns out of their hands. There isn't anything more badass than shooting a gun out of someone's hand and then throwing down a life sentence. They'll also sometimes surrender if you kill their compatriots, especially if you blow their head off.
Freeze, perp!
Hey, chill!
I'm locking you away.
Arresting perps affects your judge meter. The more people you arrest and the more side objectives you complete, the higher it goes up. But if you fail side objectives or accidentally kill civvies, it will go down. If it goes down too much, you'll fail the level, but it's incredibly easy to keep the meter up, so that happening is unlikely. It also affects your end of mission score, if you care about that sort of thing. I typically don't, although it is incredibly satisfying to hear,
I am the law,
when you get Dredd status. Even if I don't care about score that much, arresting people is extremely fun, and it really adds a needed bit of depth to what would otherwise be a pretty basic shooter. I try to arrest as many people as I can, even though at a certain point it's unnecessary. Again, getting through a gunfight, then clasping the cuffs on a bunch of perps is just too satisfying.
You will all be judged!
Weird cultist saying we'll be judged? Sure, that won't come up later. We get a better taste of taking down perps as we intercept a bank robbery. This part is also a good teaching tool. Some enemies will surrender, while others won't no matter what, and you have no choice but to take them down. We can also pick up dropped weapons. However, there is a 2-weapon limit, and you can't ditch the lawgiver, which is fine because it's useful the entire game. I really dig all the designs of these guns, very cyberpunk looking in nature. Even the basic pistol looks cool, and it isn't a pea shooter either. It does decent damage and sounds good too.
drop it now.
As soon as we exit the bank, there is more trouble afoot.
What was that thing?
I got a bad feeling about this.
Yeah, these vampires, quote unquote, are pretty much just zombies.
Which was the style at the time.
These vampires are actually kind of a challenge to hit. They move extremely erratically, and I swear some of my shots are passing through them. For the rest of the level, we just deal with vampires, so this is a good time to mention how the health system works. It's pretty similar to Halo. You have a recharging shield, and once the shield is depleted, it starts taking away from your health bar. At least on the highest difficulty, your shield is depleted extremely quickly. But you do get quite a bit of health to compensate. You can carry up to 3 med packs, and once your health is depleted, you automatically use a med pack and your health is completely refilled. In addition to that, with a mechanic similar to Half-Life Opposing Force, sometimes you can find medics who will recharge your health. Although past the early game, they are a rare occurrence. After dealing with the vampires, the boys at Psi Division get a strong signal from the penitentiary, so we're off to deal with that.
There must have been 100 vampires packed into that H-Wagon.
I'm going in.
Prison levels are typically not well regarded, but I think it's an appropriate location for this game. Plus, the dynamic of fighting alongside judges against vampires while also trying to contain the escaping prisoners is a fun one. The ultimate goal here is to stop the Dark Judges from escaping. If you're not in the know, Judge Death and his compatriots make up the Dark Judges, and are arguably the most famous antagonists of the whole mythos. In their dimension, all life has been wiped out, as the mere fact of living has been deemed a crime, and the Dark Judges were the ones who carried out the sentencing. And there's only one sentence these guys are giving out: death. So yeah, not a group of guys you really want out and about. We get the prison operational again, but we are too late to stop the Dark Judges' escape.
Locking mechanism deactivated.
What?
Now, sinner, prepare to be judged. The crime is life. The sentence is death.
We still have hope though, as the Dark Judges haven't taken physical form yet, but time is of the essence because a death cult has prepared bodies for them. I will say this is pretty much how the progression of the story goes. Go somewhere to deal with a problem, then you get an order from command to go someplace else. It's not really a good story, but it moves at such a breakneck pace, and it's so chock full of references to the comics, it makes it feel like a meaningful Judge Dredd adventure. We have to find a group of side judges that have gone missing. However, before we can do that, we are attacked by a group of local thugs who have, get this, stolen a shipment of Red Bull. By Grud, you'll pay for that. Also, a dock level right after the prison level? You're spoiling me, game. Nah, I'm just kidding. Despite what on the surface could be a generic locale, it's actually pretty cool, and the mood is helped immensely by the rain. After dealing with the local gang, we start coming across the death cultists. The initiates will surrender, but these guys in black won't. The senior members are also carrying one of my favorite guns. It's basically just a G36 and LMG configuration with some weird shit on the end. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but it makes up for it in the sheer amount of ammo it can hold. This makes it great for disarming enemies, plus it just rips people to shreds when you need to. The sight lines are pretty long on this level though, so we need to take cover as much as possible and make precision shots. We fight our way through the cultists until we make it to the location of the High Priest. I try my damnedest to arrest him, but he won't surrender.
Drop it, creep. Freeze! Spread him!
I will never
Freeze! Stop in the name of the law! Down, now!
The only reason I bothered was because the game made it seem like I could arrest him in the objectives. After killing the stragglers, we are met with the missing side judges, and we're too late. The ritual has been performed, and the dark judges now have physical forms. However, there's no time to dwell on that as we're needed at the mall for some reason. I would think this whole dark judges thing would take precedence, but I guess we don't really have any leads right now, so whatever. Remember when I said the vampires were just zombies because it's 2003? Well, now the zombies are zombies because it was the style at the time. This did actually come out before the Dawn of the Dead remake, so if you think about it, a year's difference would have changed this to being a classic reference to being contemporary. This level is extremely basic. Just fight zombies and vampires with a few side objectives scattered about. Protect judges, stop a robbery, and escort civilians. We also get our hands on the shotgun. Given its rectangular shape, it reminds me a lot of the Doom 3 shotgun. However, I certainly prefer it to Doom 3's rendition. I know the matter of that particular firearm is a contentious topic, but I'm pretty much on the it sucks side. It's certainly adept at taking out zombies and vampires, but the rate of fire is extremely low even for a video game shotgun, so if you miss, you're gonna feel it. There's also a civilian version, which has the same design principles. I never really used it though, because it holds so little ammo. I do like how the pump is like the entire gun though. We save even more civilians from the clutches of dancing zombies, and then protect a group from a horde. We need to escort them to the extract, but I'm gonna be smart about this and go ahead and clear the way. And by smart, I mean I didn't actually know that you needed to escort them to the beginning of the level. Good thing I do, because what's a group of vampires called? A coven of vampires are on the other side of this door. After getting all the civvies to safety, it's off to the next level. Upon examining the vampires and zombies, it is discovered that they are not a byproduct of the Dark Judges, but rather the virus strain is extremely similar in nature to that of Dr. Icarus's pet regen formula, which if you've been paying attention, there are advertisements for throughout the game.
It's Fluffy, darling. He's dead. There, folks.
Dr. Dick Icarus? Fluffy? He's alive! But how?
Pet Regen will bring your pets back to life. Available now, Pet Regen, because they're worth it. 555 Regen.
This level is notable for having a really long elevator.
Security breach code 5. Unauthorized access to laboratories detected.
Yeah, there isn't much to say, it's just a basic lab setting. You mostly fight vampires, however, there are a few scientists that will open fire on you. We make it to Icarus, he gives a big speech about how he's immortal now, but Dredd isn't having any of it and just shoots him.
It doesn't matter. The serum is perfected. I have discovered the key to immortality. No one can stop me now.
Consider yourself stopped.
After that, we blow up this panel, which causes the lab to start exploding. Seems like a pretty big oversight to have this one thing explode your entire facility.
Brock, where is Icarus's body gone?
Oh, well, I'm sure that won't lead to any kind of issues down the road. I think the developers kind of realized how boring this level was, because once we escape the lab, it gives way to more cultists to fight, which is always a good time. We're introduced to the grenade launcher, which has a very unique design. It's single shot, but devastating against human enemies. Not so good when you're trying to arrest as many people as possible, though. Level 6 is probably the best one in the entire game, just given how much stuff is going on and how many side objectives there are. We first end up in a death cult church, and we need to fight our way out. We then find ourselves smack dab in the slums of Mega City 1. We have the vampires and cultists to deal with, but the local toughs are also out in force. In fact, I stumble upon a gang war.
Drop it, creep.
But both sides surrender immediately. I think what happened here is that each side blew a rival member's head off, which trips off the function where they give up. That's my theory anyway. I'm sure this is not what's supposed to happen. We get a new gun that's unique to this level, a laser counterpart to the gang pistol. The sound effect is stock, but it feels good to use and can kill quickly. We continue making our way through the slums, arresting bad guys, taking out cultists, the whole 9 yards. Eventually, we come across a fellow judge we need to escort, but luckily he will just stay put until you tell him to follow you, making it extremely easy to protect him. We make it to our extract, but it's being pelted by cultists. Well, we know what to do here.
Let's go. Yeah, that beat, spit that fire, kill that beat, pull that smoke and breathe that heat. DJ gon' put that on repeat. Grind time, I heard that street. This is work, it ain't no sleep. Push until your body weak. If you don't win, then you don't eat. Here my crew don't know defeat. All we know is how to beat the brakes. Hard for anybody out there trying to stop the cheese. Nobody stopping me. He's blames a cop a plea, and I'ma put this mic.
Wait a minute, did that motherfucker just pick up a lawgiver? You can't do that. This is what happens when the lawgiver doesn't recognize the user. Well, we finish him off ourselves, and it's time to get out of here. Well, we're off to the hospital.
Judges, zombies, vampires, we're doomed.
The judges have tracked Mortis to this location. Unfortunately, he's turned most of the patients and staff into zombies. You're probably thinking that this is basically just a repeat of the mall level, and it kinda is. However, I still find it entertaining, as you have to escort survivors to safe rooms. It's a small thing, but it makes it distinct from the other zombie level, and there's a much greater sense of paranoia of what dead bodies will reanimate. We also come across a shit ton of vampires. A coven ton of vampires. It's one of the few times explosive shots are worth using. Finally make it to Judge Mortis.
Mortis will escape in ethereal form. Try releasing the sterilizing gas. That might scare Mortis off.
He shoots this stuff, I don't know what to call it. Mortis himself goes down easy. You just have to shoot these things around the room and then flip this switch, releasing a sterilizing gas. However, there are civilians in the room, and if you don't escort them to safety first, the gas will kill them. If your judge meter is high enough, that stunt won't fail the mission, but I save them anyway because I'm just a swell guy like that. Doing that takes longer than you would think though. They're as slow as Stom, and one hit from Mortis and they die. The best strat is to run around the room in order to aggro Mortis, then run back and get them out of there before he has time to reposition. Finally, I get the last person out, but they can't properly be saved because these spug heads are taking up too much room. Great. Well, at the very least, she didn't die, which would lower my score. We release the sterilizing agent, which causes Judge Mortis to run headfirst into a quarantine chamber where we trap him.
Curse you, Dredd. The 3 others remain to judge your life-infested city. Give up your worthless battle.
Control, get a side squad down here fast.
Fire in the smokeatorium.
Well, you know what they say, where there's smoke, there's fire, and I've got a pretty good idea who's causing it.
Hey, anybody got a light?
Certainly, sit down.
The fact they were able to work in smokeatoriums is pretty admirable. Smoking has been deemed illegal in the future except for designated zones. It differs from the comics a little, as in that it's shown you need a hazmat helmet in order to even breathe. I understand why they didn't do that though. Making all new models just for this one level in the game wouldn't be a great use of resources, especially considering it's the shortest level in the entire game. All you need to do is get the sprinkler system working again, so go down to the lowest level, avoiding Judge Fire in the process. And let me tell you, you really want to avoid his attacks, because being lit on fire in this game is horribly annoying. You get to the control room, but the door panel is busted, so you need to go back up a few floors and find another way in. Take care of the zombies and get it up and operational again. Then start turning on the sprinklers. This will make Judge Fire keep ascending floors. It's supposed to anyway. He gets stuck and I have to push him. Despite that, the rest of the level plays out normally. We suck him up into these fans, destroying his physical body, and he gets sucked up in a ghost trap.
That's 2 down. 2 to go.
Total time, 4 minutes and 26 seconds. Also, I have no idea how you're supposed to increase your score on this level. There aren't any side objectives and you can't arrest anyone. Get ready for the most boring level in the entire game. Judge Death has shown up at a recyc center, so now we're headed there. Recyc centers are also from the comic and are used to harvest and quote-unquote recycle dead bodies. You know, for normal things like organ donation, manufacturing, food. Put Soylent Green to shame, really. No one even cares. All that really amounts to in-game is a drab facility where you only fight vampires and zombies. I just don't have anything to say about it. We catch up to Death and throw his ass in the meat grinder. But with no one else on standby, he escapes to the undercity. Luckily, that stinker of a level is followed up by one that is a lot better. The undercity is the remnants of what used to be New York. Basically, they just gave up on it and built Mega 64 Mega City 1, but luckily that provides us with some cool locales. I'm always a sucker for decrepit subways. I don't know why. Unfortunately, there isn't a lot of ammo to spare on this level, and I'm forced to use this shitty laser rifle. Some of it is my fault on why it's so underpowered, as you need to charge up each shot to do better damage, and I didn't figure that out until later. I suppose it's fine for human enemies, but it's terrible against the quick and erratic moving vampires. It fires way too slowly, and even when fully charged, it's not an instant kill. Luckily, we don't have to deal with that for too long, as we eventually make it to the cultist base of operations, the old museum. What's somewhat unfortunate is that even the initiates at this point won't surrender anymore. Guess they're coming in dead.
I could bring you in warm or lukewarm.
Ooga zabinga booga!
Lawbreaker!
After finishing off the rest of the cultists, it's time to fight Judge Fear. There's some wacky vampires that harass us, and Fear will throw out these bear traps. I give up on trying to take down the vampires and just focus on dealing damage to Fear. He's the only boss in the game that you fight normally. Despite this, he takes so much punishment, you start becoming under the impression that you're doing something wrong. But no, he just has an extreme amount of health. We kill his body, trap him, and we head in after Anderson and Judge Death into the dead world. Most games have a tendency to fall apart at the 11th hour, and unfortunately this game is no exception. While the actual art direction of Dead World is pretty cool, the level design is boring as Stom. Oh boy, more zombies to fight! Ah, but don't fret, we also get to fight more vampires! Why are they even here? I thought the vampires were a byproduct of Icarus's serum, and it didn't actually have anything to do with the Dark Judges. Whatever, I just make my way through as quickly as possible, running past as many enemies as I can. There are a few cultists to fight, but most of them are preoccupied with the undead, making them easy targets. After that, we finally make it to Judge Death, and we get a payoff to the whole missing Icarus body thing.
This magnificent body, Icarus's
sinful research into eternal life would seem to have its uses.
I killed Icarus.
A worthy attempt, but his serum had already taken effect. Now his body is indestructible, and it is mine.
The time of judgment is at hand.
Over my dead body.
If you think this boss fight is gonna be good, I might have cause to call you a drocking spugwit, but I won't be so crass. It reminds me a lot of the first boss fight from Quake, actually, as you can't damage the boss with your weapons. You have to go around in a circle freeing the side judges, like you have to run around on those pressure pads in Quake. Then all you need to do is distract Death while Anderson and the side judges use their psychic powers to confine him into Anderson's body. It's pretty damn lame, but at least it's not annoying. That's pretty much it. Anderson's okay and everything pretty much goes back to the status quo, which is only slightly less bad than the events of this game.
Thank you very much. Joe, you weren't worried about me, were you?
Control to Dredd. Block war in progress. Corner of Reeves and Hopper.
On my way, Control. Dredd out.
I guess we'll never know.
I think the takeaway from this is we need more Judge Dredd games, god damn it! I mean, this is a pretty basic shooter on the surface, but just adding the elements from the Judge Dredd comics makes this, in my opinion, a pretty darn good game. It's not perfect, and it's extremely short, clocking in at around 4 to 5 hours, but this just solidifies my opinion that we need someone else to take a crack at this. Just imagine what a proper budget and modern tech could do for this game. Hell, we're getting a new RoboCop game this year, so why not Judge Dredd? Here's hoping that will soon become a reality. Thanks for watching.